Seated. Psalm 53, as we read this morning, there is a similar psalm, not similar psalm, almost identical psalm, that it is also looks in the same perspective. It is Psalm 14. Psalm 14 and Psalm 53 are identical psalm, except for a small portion in Psalm 53 where he calls upon in the second part. It says, "For God has scattered the bones of him who encamps against you. You have put them to shame because God has despised them." Other than that, Psalm 14 and Psalm 53 is almost identical. So I'm going to just take, because Psalm 14 has got 7 verses, I'm going to just turn your attention to Psalm 14, even though the psalm is the same this morning. So, as I said, Psalm 53 is the revision or the addition of last 2 lines in verse 5. See, one of the sanctuary musicians, I think, revised the original psalm and to fit probably an occasion, defeat of an Assyrian army or something in the days of King Hezekiah. But it's always good to take the old and adapt it into the new, and so that we can always declare the goodness of God or what the Word of God wants to declare. The only change in chapter 53 is, instead of the word Jehovah, God is being called as Elohim, that is God himself, and the God of covenant. So the theme of Psalm 14 and Psalm 53 is the same: the folly of the godless and the restoration of Israel. That is what, and God's final triumph, as it says in 14 and in 53, it talks about the restoration of Israel. So, the psalm deals with the character and conduct of the practical atheist. So, everybody wants to listen to psalms that is talking about goodness of God, talking about progressive love of God. All these things is good. But sometimes we also want to know the other side of it. And here in Psalm 14 and Psalm 53, it talks about, honestly, a practical atheist. It says, "The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They are corrupt. They have done abominable works. There is none who does good." So these people, it talks about, Psalm 10, Psalm 12, Psalm 14, all these talks about the foolish or the ungodly in God's sight. So the first aspect that we want to cover this morning is people who willfully deny God. The willful folly of the people. They ignore God. See, in the original Bible or the original text of the scriptures, the word fool comes from the Latin called bellows, or that means, bellows is what? Man of, or a head full of hot air. We talk about people, right? Hot air. इसके अंदर कुछ नहीं है, केवल हवा है. And there are people like that, right? There is the other word that is called as kessel, which is dull, and then there is one that we call, in plain English, we call stupid, which is stupid fool, and which translate to evil, or which is the perverted fool. But the word really that is used in here is Nabal. Who was Nabal? Abigail's ex-husband, one-time husband. ഒരു കാലത്ത് സേവനമനുഷ്ഠിച്ച Nabal. Right? So what was his problem? David came asking for food. He said what? Who is David? Get out of my face. But Abigail understood. She took the food and went into David and his people and gave it, and then ultimately she became his wife. But he was unreasonable. He was stubborn. That was the key. He was stubborn. And here in chapter 14 and chapter 53, it talks about people that are really stubborn. And so in 14:1 it says, he fool says in his heart there is no God. Just like he was saying there is, who is David? It's the same thing that people say there is no God. Right? They lack the spiritual wisdom and insight. They have a moral problem in their heart, not a mental problem in their head. See, some people say, "Padke pagal ho gaya." Right? That is exactly what it is. People, in the sense that you learn and learn and learn, and then you become crazy. And because you learn too much, at that you even deny the existence of why you are there. And that is what it is. They are self-righteous and don't need or want God. I think I have said this of people who have come in, and once upon a time a young person came in and said that, you know what, I have a master's in engineering, I drive a BMW, I have a wonderful woman, a wonderful girl as my girlfriend, a beautiful girl as my girlfriend. Why do I need anything else? Why do I need to go to heaven? Why do I need God? And it's something that these people, and they are not ignorant people. They are people that have the knowledge. They are willfully having folly. See, the willful ignorance is the cause of consequences that is beyond what they can comprehend. Dear brothers and sisters, willfully when we deny, and young people and old alike, when we willfully deny, this is the same thing that happens in church. We come to church just like I said this morning. It is not denying God, probably, but you come because you do not want anything to do with God. You just come because of the compulsion, maybe because of parents, maybe because of spouse, maybe because of something else, or maybe because of the position that you have in church, that you come. You willfully are committing this folly. You are arrogant. And I'm saying this, and I said this morning, from this morning, don't come to church or don't come to God because somebody has asked you to. Come because you willfully want to surrender to Him because of who He is. The willfully ignorant. All people cannot do anything, all that is good enough to merit heaven. Not one. But only because of the grace of God, of the access of God, that we have the access. Right? That song, that Tamil song that we sing, Endha Kalathilum, Endha Velailum, or Endha Nerathilum, Nandiyal Umainan, Studipain. In any time, in any situation, I am thanking you because willfully I want to surrender, unlike these natural or these atheists that is out there who willfully ignore God. Verse 4 through 6 of chapter 14, it says, have all the workers of iniquity no knowledge, who eat up my people as they eat bread, and do not call on the Lord. There they are in great fear, for God is with the generation of the righteous. You shame the counsel of the poor, but the Lord is his refuge. See, once upon a time, Bertrand Russell, who was agnostic, who didn't believe in God, a British philosopher, he was asked what he would say if, when he died, he suddenly found himself standing before God. Russell replied, you did not give us sufficient evidence. Now, if the heavens above us, the earth beneath our feet, the wonder of nature around us, and the life and the consequence within us don't convince us of the existence of a creator, how much more evidence must the Lord give? Honestly, look around. God has given us everything around. It cannot come into existence without a God or a creator. And that is the God that we serve. So, when they suddenly meet God, probably there is a sudden fear, and that is what it says. There they are in great fear, for God is with the generation of the righteous. You shame the counsel of the poor, but the Lord is his refuge. See, an atheist Russian cosmonaut said he'd looked carefully while in space and didn't see God. Someone commented, if he had opened the door of the space capsule, he would have met him. sometimes that fear is not there in people, but that fear will be there on the judgment seat. There is a day of reckoning that is coming, that if we willfully ignore God and if we willfully do not follow God, that there would be a reckoning where the wheat and the chaff would be separated. And the third aspect is verse 7. Oh, that salvation of Israel would come out of Zion. When the Lord brings back the captivity of his people, let Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad. So when that Lord brings back the captivity of his people, some people have said that this is about the Israel's captivity when they were captives in Babylon. This is not that, because that was forecasted to be the 70 years. But this is about the return of our soon and coming King. And when that happens, salvation of Israel would come out of Zion. When the Lord brings back the captivity of his people, Jacob rejoice and Israel be glad. Those people that have willfully ignored him, they would have a joyless future. But those who follow him will have a life of eternity spent with joy and gladness in his presence. Those who ignore God have no future with the Lord because they prefer not to know him or live for him. They lived according to the desires of their own heart, not to please the Lord and glorify him. Those who reject Jesus will spend eternity apart from the Lord and will honestly be able to say in hell, there is no God here. Dear brothers and sisters, I know you all are believers. Sometimes there is a book that is written by Craig Rochelle. It is called as The Christian Atheist. And he talks about how all these people come to church, but they still are not convinced of this true God. Dear brothers and sisters, are we a people that ignore God? If so, we are willfully ignoring the existence of him. There would be a fear that will come when the chaff and the wheat is being separated. But there would be a day of reckoning that is happening. If you are continuing to be an atheist, that is, not willfully following God, then your eternity is spent where there is eternal fire. But if you willfully choose to follow this God, your eternity will be spent in the presence of God with joy forevermore. So this morning, that is what I want to bring you. Willfully do not ignore God. And if you willfully ignore God, there will be sudden fear when you meet God. And when you meet God, you will also understand that if you did not follow this God, you will have eternity to spend without joy, but with crying. And your eternity with him will be joyful if you continue to follow him. Let us be people